So there's some sense organs up in the head region, and prominently there's eyes, and in a cross section you can see the eyes. They look like this. So, okay. Are you being able to see? If I'm not turning around far enough for you to see, let me know. In general, if people aren't seeing something, let me know. I try to make sure that people are seeing, but if you're not, don't be shy. Okay. So there's the lateral eyes, and that's the retina. There would be a lens sitting there, but it fell out when they cut the eyes open. Okay. And we'll see eyes much better when we look at sharks, but just nice to see that, yes, they indeed, lampreys, they have eyes. They don't see that well, but they do have them. The inner ears, I do not believe I grabbed a good slice for the inner ears. This is another eye, so we're a little too far forward. So yeah, I don't have a good slice for an inner ear, but they're a little bit further back. Again, we'll spend a lot of time on them in the sharks, but you can see them in the ammoseed larva on those whole mount slides. If you look in the region of the hindbrain and kind of focus up and down, there will be kind of a bubble, a clear bubbly thing that you see in that area, and that's the inner ear. And that's about all it looks like on the ammoseed whole mount slide. Okay. Oral glands, so on either side, you won't see this in the sagittal section, but on either side up in the head region, there's these big glands, and those are the anticoagulant glands that they have to keep the blood from coagulating as they feed. Okay, here. And can someone keep an eye on the times? I can't see the clock.
How does it keep it from coagulating?
35.
35? Okay, so I got about 15 minutes. What's that?
How does it keep it from coagulating? A chemical or something?
It's a chemical, and it's just like heparin, which is used in when people are like getting it transfused. They heparinize everything so the blood doesn't clot. It just keeps that cascade of clotting factors from initiating. Beyond that, I don't really know. But, okay. And good so far? Okay. Cool. So oral cavity, I think everyone kind of got the oral cavity, mouth cavity on the buccal funnel and all that good stuff. So if you follow back within the head region, you see this structure here. What would that be?
Tongue.
Tongue. Okay, just checking. So that's the tongue, and I think everyone pretty much got the tongue. And you can see that there's some keratinized teeth on the tip of the tongue, and that's what's used to rasp a hole in the side of the fish when they go to feed on it. And there's some cartilage that supports the tongue called the lingual cartilage. There's muscle in there, lingual muscle, to extend it forward and back so it can move back and forth and wear a hole. But if you follow back above the tongue, what you see is you can follow back into this spot right here, okay, where there's going to be a split between the respiratory passage and the food passage, okay? And that little flap that forms that split is called the velum. So if I run the probe ventrally here, that's going to pass towards the pharynx and the respiratory tube. Do you see that? Okay, here. That's the respiratory tube that it's going into. And you can see all those internal gill slits opening there. But just dorsally there, right, like this, if I can get into the right spot, there we go. Right in there, that's the esophagus, just above the respiratory tube. And that's where food is going to go. Okay. You see that? Okay. This is actually kind of an important thing. So there's a split right there at the front end between where food goes and where water for respiration would go. You see that? Okay. All right. And that little flap that forms that split is the velum. And these guys are kind of strange because you think about most fish. Water goes in the mouth, into the pharynx, out the pharyngeal slits, across the gills, and then so they breathe. But if you're a lamprey, your mouth is stuck on a fish all the time. So you're not bringing water in your mouth and out through your gill slits when you're stuck on a fish. And so what lampreys do as adults is they actually just bring water in and out of their external gill slits across the gills, back and forth, back and forth. And they've got a separate passage for food down this esophagus that separates the food passage from the flow of water in and out of the, and that's kind of a special thing of lampreys. It's not a primitive feature. It's unique, derived with their parasitic lifestyle that they've got. That makes sense? Okay. All right, so there's the pharynx, split really into esophagus and respiratory tube, and there's the internal gill slit, so the respiratory tube. Leading back from the esophagus is the intestine, which is this very long, thin tube. It's very simple. You might imagine blood is a pretty easy thing to digest. It doesn't take much of a digestive tract to digest blood. Okay, so it's very simplified. Digestive tract. And inside of the intestine is a spiral valve,